a pond snail pried from its shell, some with arms or legs splayed, or with arms or legs broken, blown off, crushed. Blood pools from under the bodies, bubbles up, oozes into rust, is splattered on their uniforms, their life breaths hushed, swirling, hovering above, sucked within, butterflies, too stunned to fly home. Our sergeant, a compassionate man, picks his way through the corpses, clutching a torch and his beads, pointing to this one or that, the few still writhing or uttering a slow moan, the glint of an eye now raw and weary, a rabbit of dread, and we follow, bayonets poised, then thrusting quickly, aiming true into their hearts, rending souls, these still wavering, these rice birds starting in and out. And another one about this, the aftermath of a battle. It's called The Boots. We pulled out the bodies out of the rubble. My eyes immediately spied the shiny ankle boots on one of the corpses, most likely a new officer. The soles of my shoes had worn through. I wanted his and wondered out loud how warm they would be, so thick and smooth. But he had died some time ago, his body frozen stiff. Again and again I tried to pull the boots off, but they clung to the feet like bark on a tree. Everyone laughed, and someone even suggested I cut through the leather and then try to sew it back up. But I came up with another idea, and with my bayonet I stabbed away around the knees, chipping off flesh hard as wood. Finally, I hit bone all around and sought to pry open the joints. I placed a mound of bricks like a fulcrum underneath the knees, and then with some others weighing down on the chest, I jumped on top of his feet to crack the legs off. Once severed, I cradled them in my arms like two logs over to where the cooks had built a fire. By the end of our meal, the feet had thawed, soft enough for me to tug the boots off. I sat on the ground, holding the exposed knee joint while my buddy clutched the heel. I scooped out the rest of the flesh and cleaned the insides, flushing them thoroughly with hot water. Quickly, I dried them out, inside and out. I polished the leather before trying them on. The boots were a size too large, but I just needed to steal a second pair of socks to wear. Now they will last me through the war and keep me warm and dry. It is my luck. I surely will survive. After the city of Nanjing fell, thousands of Chinese soldiers became prisoners of war whom the Japanese were unable to deal with. Many POWs were simply machine gunned en masse and dumped into the large pits or the river. Here are 3 poems about other atrocities. This first is from the point of view of a captured Chinese soldier. It's entitled New Recruits. He jabs me with the tip of his blade, then he steps back holding his rifle waist high. He takes several deep breaths. He hardly looks at me, but suddenly lunges. I am lucky I can wriggle about, even though my hands are bound to a pole behind my back. He has stood too far away, so I quickly twist myself around and catch his bayonet in my side under my rib cage. It still hurts. I grimace. The pain howls through my body. My shirt is soaked with blood. The realization hits me now. This is for real. I am to die. I try to resist, but I feel faint. I groan. My knees give way, and I slide down the pole. Other soldiers start yelling. They point to my chest, my belly. He was supposed to kill me, but has not. So he tries again, this time standing above me, his eyes staring straight into my heart. I am immobile, in a squat, my head leaning forward towards him. I growl, I scream, I beg for mercy. This time he stabs me once, then again and again, cracking my ribs, tearing apart my guts, slashing my throat, my face. I die, but he continues his thrust and grunts until he is covered with the splatterings of my flesh, mingled with his sweat, his frenzied tears inside my lungs, the death of my life, now woven into his new life of death. And another poem, this one describes a peculiar burial of an individual Chinese POW. Thrown into the earth, as if into the sea, but there is no buoyancy for the body to rise to the surface, no room for legs to kick or arms to paddle. Submerged underground, there is no light, no sound. The little air within the shoveled over dirt is sucked up in no time, gasping for more. Small clumps of soil fall into the mouth and nostrils and eyes. Panic seizes. The struggle to breathe becomes all-consuming. The heart keeps pounding, lungs collapse, muscles go slack, the brain in shock, the soul no escape. This third poem is based on statements by a Japanese officer named Uno Shintaro, as reported in a book by Honda Katsuichi, The Nanjing Massacre. So I used these statements as inspiration for this particular poem. It's entitled The Beheader. The sword carried my mother's spirit. I bathed it with water poured gently from a small dipper. Then I checked my stance using the back of the blade to touch his neck ever so lightly to gauge my reach. I turned the blade over, lifted it above my right shoulder, and swung hard. There was a soft swishing noise. The blade sliced, cleaving through the flesh and bone. The head dropped off in front of him. A thud on the ground, face down. The neck seemed to contract slightly. Then 2 streams of blood spurted forth, and his body slumped forward. Then the blood stopped. I was nervous because my blade had been bent. I checked my rivet, it had held. I did not enjoy this duty, unlike some of the other officers who had uttered a cry as if cheering at each beheading. I did not toy with the prisoners either, first loudly going through the motions to deceive them into thinking that they had already been cut, and then when they raised their heads like some stupid deer, striking them for real. Some of them swayed, they had been tortured, half-starved. Maybe they were praying or hoping that it was just a test. They just kept their heads lowered. We did not blindfold them, but what they saw at those last moments, I do not know. I struck again and again, each man kneeling along the line. I became flustered, out of breath, perspiring. Wiping my forehead, I also wiped my tears. A few heads I lopped off neatly. For the others, my blade got caught in the bone, the head clinging somehow to the front flap of the neck, hopping under the chest as the torso fell. Occasionally, I had to stop to wash off the blood, turn sticky, the bits of flesh. My blade was still bent, and I had to straighten it with my hands. My rivet also started to loosen, creating a rattle. I hastened to complete my job. The whole village was wailing. The thick blood spewed all over. I was angry and confused. I was determined to honor my mother. After the Japanese got rid of the threat of military resistance inside the city, they quickly shifted their attention to the civilian population that remained. Here is another group of 3 poems about what happened to some of the women. This one is entitled An Autopsy at the Moment of Death. The big toe on the right foot reveals a cut from when she stubbed it against a loose pile of rubble as she was fleeing. Scrapes on her knee, her elbows, and the palms of her hands show how hard she fell when she tripped. There are scabs on her scalp above her left ear where a clump of hair was yanked off as they caught up with her and pulled her up. Her skin is chalk white, drained of color in this winter light. They ripped off her clothes, leaving only one cotton shoe. There are purple bruises on her shoulders and upper arms, marking where they had held her down. Small rocks are embedded into her back around her shoulder blades from when they pressed her into the ground. Her vocal cords are raw from her screaming. Her cheekbones bear red